Ms. Jones, would you please call the roll? I think we have a quorum.
Okay. Senator Lowenthal?
Here.
Senator Hancock? Senator Renner? Assemblymember Brownlee? Assemblymember Buchanan? Assemblymember Hagman? Esteban Almanza?
Here.
Jeannie Oropeza?
Here.
Pedro Reyes?
Present.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and get started. Is there any public comments? Or we wait for the issues when they come up? Thank you. You know, we've had this project information worksheet item that's been held over several times because Senator Runner had an interest on that. And I was wondering what the wish of the board is. I think there are two options. One is to, as we all know, Senator Runner unfortunately is not doing well. And I don't know when she'll come back, but I think this is an item that we should address. And with all due respect to Senator Runner, I think we do need to decide as a board whether we want to take it out for conversation, or the alternative is to send it to the implementation committee for them to work out some of the issues, ways to streamline, maybe applying it to other programs. I think some of the information we're getting has been very helpful, and there's some void in some of the programs. But I think there's got to be ways to streamline it. Some of the reports are probably not necessary, like the second report, another 3 reports, and so forth. So with the board's permission, would that be okay to just send it to the implementation committee?
Fine.
Do I need a motion for that, or is that direction enough?
Direction enough.
Okay, excellent, thank you. The other item that I do want to bring up is that we had originally scheduled a closed session for today, and we do not need that. I think the issue's been resolved, and I think we're in pretty good shape on that. Thank you, Ms. Brownlee. How are you? So with that, we'll go to tab 2.
The minutes are ready for your approval.
Been moved. Moved in second. Any public comment on the minutes? Any questions, comments? Okay, do we need to take a roll call?
I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't here before.
Okay, but that still gives us enough votes to approve them. Thank you. Item 3, executive officer statements.
Yeah, we have actually about 6 items to share with you tonight. We were actually quite busy over the last month. I want to give the board an update on the fund releases that were approved, the apportionments that were approved in December of 2011. This board did provide $923.8 million for priority funding apportionments for 377 school districts. And so as of January 20th, the Office of Public School Construction did receive over 194 fund release requests for $442 million. So we've been pretty busy over the last few weeks, and nearly $370 million has been released to projects. So those are big progress movements that we're making as far as releasing the cash to those projects. Again, the districts that come in with priorities of funding have until March 13th to come in for the 5005. So with that in mind, again, the reminder to all school districts that there either has to be physically received by March 13th by 5 p.m. And again, if those projects don't succeed in moving forward with the fund release, then we're actually going to move those projects to the unfunded list, and they would be redated for March 13th. Another issue I'd like to share is the new priorities and funding certification period currently opened. There is a new 30-day filing round. We did make that announcement at the last board. So the certification period began January 11th and ends February 9th. And as of January 20th, we actually did receive 83 requests so far for $273 million. And again, we encourage all those folks that are currently on the unfunded list to submit their certifications if they qualify. And another thing that we want to reiterate is those projects that are approved tonight also will have the opportunity to submit for the priorities funding certification. And again, reiterate the point that they need to come in by February 9th. And The third item I'd like to share is the new construction subcommittee had a hearing on January 11th. Assemblymember Buchanan will be presenting an overview of that item, of basically all the discussions that we've had recently. And we do have a follow-up subcommittee hearing scheduled for February 6th on Monday, and that's from 3:30 to 5:30. So look forward to the agenda and the webcast posted on our website. An update on the prevailing wage monitoring requirements. We actually did have an informational session this morning for our stakeholders that included with Department of Industrial Relations that we actually partnered up with today. So it actually had some good discussions there, and there was actually some earlier forums during the month. So we're hoping to give some outreach, some opportunities for folks that are maybe unclear about the process. We actually had 2 lead agencies speaking on those particular topics. So again, give us a few days and we can actually post that information on our website. Some information we wanted to share is the new use of modernization funds as a result of SB 128, Senator Lowenthal, his bill. We actually are allowing districts at this point in time to submit modernization applications on or after January 1st. Those particular projects with modernization funds that actually have some green attributes, high performance, they can come in for funding. And so, but again, it's not limited to new energy systems or solar panels. Again, we did send an email blast to school districts allowing them that they can come in for the program. We had some projects over the fall that came in maybe prematurely before the bill was enacted, so those projects have been, those folks have been contacted and they have been encouraged to apply. And our last item, we actually wanted to give the board a follow-up. There was much discussion last month about the money that was drawn and how much cash that we had to apportion to projects. And we did share with the board there was some shortfalls in some of the cash that we were seeking in the charter school program, and we're happy to announce that we did actually fine $7 million for those folks. So we did notify the Charter School Association. We're actually going to work on an email blast notifying those school districts that there is additional funds available that can come in for those advanced site and design funding, and again reiterate that the importance of submitting those fund release requests by May 2nd, 2012. And that's what I have tonight.
Thank you. Any comments, Mr. Senator Lowenthal?
First, I want on the new use of modernization funds, I want to thank you for moving forward with that and expanding what is allowable under modernization to not just replacement, but to really to be able to access high performance also. The question though I have is that that bill had 2 parts to it besides the change in modernization grants to allow them to look at high performance. The other part of it was CTE, which was, as we know, career technical education for them, for those grants also to look at, to be able to access high performance grants. That was the second part, also signed by the governor and passed by the legislature. Actually, it was under the, it was my Republican colleague in the Senate that really asked me to add that part to the bill, those colleagues. And so I just want to follow up on that to make sure that we're really, the implementation committee is working on that, on the career technical education part. Okay, and I don't know if it's set in stone about the new construction subcommittee. I'm really looking forward to that. It turns out that I'm not going to be here on February 6th as a so either I can go forward or we can reschedule, but it just turns out I'm not. Okay,
Yeah,
I just really want to talk because I really want to be, I know I was not ready the last time. I do, as you're trying to influence me. And I think that's wonderful. That's why we have committees. Persuade. Thank you. And you're doing a good job, but I need to be there.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Oropesa?
I just want to acknowledge the hard work of OPSC in getting the money out quickly in all the projects and not let that go unnoticed. So thank you for your hard work.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bruce?
Thank you, Chairman Reyes, members of the board. I'm here today just to reiterate an issue that has been placed in a letter by the Oceanside Unified School District regarding the priority funding round, and a question related to how available funds are distributed. I won't take much of your time today except to express the Oceanside School District's concern that money that did become available during the previous priority funding round may be being apportioned to projects that are only now getting on a new funding round. It's our belief that when money becomes available determines which list of priority funding projects receive that money. I think maybe I've scrambled it a little bit. I'm simply trying to say that during a 6-month period, when there is a priority funding list, any funds that become available should be apportioned, in my opinion, under the board's guidelines to projects that are on the list at that time. And it may be that for administrative reasons, the Office of Public School Construction has to do some things with the funds before the apportionments can be made, and therefore the apportionments are not actually made until a second funding list has been created. But in my opinion, the board's guidelines on this require that money to be given to the list that was in effect at the time the money became available, not to the list that exists the time the apportionments are made. And we realize that that's not on your agenda to discuss today, but we would, because it was brought up by Ms. Silverman as another funding round being underway, we'd appreciate your consideration of that issue.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you wait a sec? With the board's indulgence, I would like to take care of item number 10 for Ms. Fuller. She's here for that. Is the Needles appeal? Is there an objection to that, to jumping out of order? Hearing none.
Thank you.
My apologies, Ms. Fuller.
Thank you. I'm very glad to
all of a sudden I look back and go, ooh.
Well, it's actually exciting for me to get to come see you from the opposite side of the table. I am pleased to be back with you this afternoon as a former member of this board. I really appreciate the hard decisions you have to make, and I know that there are many tough decisions coming, but I'm here today to talk to you on behalf of the Needles Unified School District, and I think you'll find some of the facts compelling. They're a very, very small district out in the middle of, well, they're next to 3 rivers, or Big River, I guess it is, and I've never been there, and it's in my district. The territory that their school district has is the size of Connecticut. They only have 900 students. They have declining enrollment, and they started to build a school, and it has taken them 11 years because of all the problems that they were required to do on BLM land and whatever, including building a wastewater treatment plant for the school, not being able to get power, and so on. So what started out 11 years ago is now about to come to conclusion. The school is about to be inhabited, that you all actually funded at $13 million. But the problem is that they were required to demolish the old school, and the kids had to stay in the old school for 10 of those 11 years because they couldn't move to the new school because it couldn't open. Then they had to bus the kids, some of them as long as 45 minutes, across the state line to an Arizona school and pay $500,000 every year to house them there. So my ask today is to consider that their very unique situation. They are asking to be given a place in line, not a priority place, just a place in line for a relatively minor amount of funding the next time the eligible funding becomes available. There are many challenges for the school, but at this point, if the kids can just move in that nice new facility, if they can take care of the demolition, and I think they're down to, the total price now will be under $300,000, so you might have more on there, so half would be about $150,000. It would mean a great deal to this school, and I think it's a better use of our resources, or I wouldn't be here. Sending $500,000 over the line, they're very small. I don't know how else it would work. There is some indication that 11 years ago, the school district should have put that on the application. In my review, I'm not exactly sure whether they did or they didn't, but it doesn't matter. The school district doesn't wish to contest that. They're just here to sort of throw themselves on your mercy. Thank you.
Staff want to add anything to that?
Well, if I may, and thank you for giving the background, Senator Fuller. The reason, I'd like to go over just a little bit about the reasons why staff feels that we're unable to support the district's request. The district asked us to consider the additional funding under two avenues. The first as an error or omission on the original project, if it was an oversight and not submitted. And the funding for a facility hardship project and a new construction project, it would fall under site development. And demolition is an allowable expense in some cases. And in the case it's eligible under the site development regulations, .76, is when the new buildings lie in the footprint of the old buildings. In this particular case, since the district is abandoning the old site and going to a completely new site, it didn't quite meet that criteria. So it doesn't meet those regulations.
And before you go to that next point, can I just, and the reason was because they had leased land from the Bureau of Reclamation. This is kind of out in the middle of nowhere with a lot of federal land, and the Bureau kicked them off. So they had to get a new site on BLM land. Am I correct in that? That's
New, I believe, is leased as well.
it is also leased. And they would have, and so the main reason that they left the old site to go to a new site was not because of the district's need to, it was because they were kicked out by the government, basically.
And there was another aspect as well to that facility hardship in that it was on a two-lane road very far out from other areas, and it was a dangerous two-lane road, and that was part of its original facility hardship. So moving on to the second avenue that the district asked us to explore, there is an allowance for an exception to the full and final requirement in the education code. And that allowance is when there are relocation costs incurred in the process of the project. Relocation costs are defined in regulation or by direction to Title 25. And Title 25 California Code of Regulations. And Title 25 basically defines relocation expenses for a displaced entity in the course of eminent domain proceedings. And we didn't feel that that fit in this case. It was not part of an eminent domain. Yes, there was a lease issue, but it was not part of the eminent domain issue. So those were the two areas, and of course we looked fully at the regulations, and since it didn't meet those two criteria, didn't fit in there, staff had previously administratively denied the request and does not support it today.
And so I guess my final closing would just be that eminent domain requires you to move, and you don't have the ability to not move. And that was the situation that they found themselves in. The difference was that it was a lease from the Bureau. And this was 11 years ago, several school boards ago, several superintendents ago. I'm not sure everybody could argue all the facts accurately. If I'm not getting them right, please feel free to chime in. But basically, that was the problem. It was not the school district's fault that they had to change location. They really had no choice. Thank you very, very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
And thank you, staff. I understand that this is a tough question. It's just that this little school really needs the help. Thank you.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's interesting because every time we have a different new appeal, there's always new issues. And I think that's kind of what we see in a great state like California with so many diversified different settings, that you can't make a law perfect to fit every situation thought of or not brought up in the future. I'm wondering what the difference would be when you pay for a site acquisition and then 2 years down the line when the school starts figuring out, because I see a lot of these too, toxic cleanup that goes into the millions or things like that for site cleanup after they find out after the fact, so to speak. I'm sympathetic to the Needles cause in this case because it wasn't a choice by the district. It's kind of like a forced to type of thing. The project was approved to build a new school, and this is kind of left over. But I'm wondering, A, in those same type of circumstances, we approve X amount of dollars to buy a new site, and we find out a whole bunch of problems with that site later, or the utilities aren't brought up there. When many of the other number of things we've seen here on these appeals so far in the last year, for me, to take care of an old obligation if it's required by law because the federal government is saying this. A, do we need to amend any of our regulations, or B, is it something prohibit us from us taking care of this in this example?
Ms. Buchanan.
Yeah, I view it a little differently, but we might be overall on the same page. And because it's, you know me, I'm kind of outspoken on exceptions and people following the rules and all of that, but I don't know how many schools we have on federal lands in this state, but my guess is we have 1,000 school districts. If we had 10,000 plus schools, we probably have a handful at most, probably on reservations, or in this case, this situation. And if the district could have replaced on the same site, we would have paid for the demolition. But there's no way the district could have built on this site out of no fault of their own. And so I agree that if we want to follow technically the letter, they don't qualify. I'm not sure I want to change the rules because maybe these exceptions are so rare they should come to us because we are the ones that should be deciding these. But to penalize the district because the feds kicked them off the land and wanted them to do work that would have been covered in any other situation, if they would have rebuilt on that land, which they would have, or if they were at another site would have done it, it seems, you know, it seems that it's not reasonable. And so while I'm always the stickler of the rules, I think this is a situation where it would make sense to make an exception, not because it's an oversight, because everything could be an oversight, but because we have a very unique situation and that this was part of the lands and requirements for Bureau of Reclamation.
So are you moving it?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any other questions or comments? Let me ask a question. If this were a property lease from a private individual, then you would have a different view. But because it's a government entity and then we're not given the option to redo, or would you have the same position if it was a, I don't know, Hagman Enterprises that owns the properties?
I think for the most part, I like the district owning their own property when they're building. We're using 30-year bond money to build a school. It'd be nice if they own the property so you're not moving it around next time your lease comes up. So I think it's very rarely that you ever should lease out a site in the first place, with the exception of being a government entity or a tribal nation or something like that. I think that's the only exception I would consider it for. If a district has a 20-year lease and we're going to put 30 years in the bond money into a 50-year school site, that's probably not a very good business move to begin with. So I do draw the exception with that because in some areas in the state, the federal government owns quite a bit of land, and you can't really find too many spots around some of those big swatches there. So I think that is a unique situation when it comes to the government entity like that.
Okay. Ms. Hancock.
It's my understanding that that this was a financial hardship school, so it got 100% funding from the state, no match.
It was under the Facility Hardship Program, and part of it was financial hardship. I don't have a copy of the actual funding item with me right now, but a portion of it was financial hardship. The district may be able to speak closer to that.
But this portion is facilities hardship, correct? Is that what they're,
The whole project qualified, yes, under the Facility Hardship Program.
so they're asking for 50% funding under this, right? Under the facilities hardship. I just want to clarify. That's what
But the
was
school itself is a financial hardship.
I see a couple of district folks. Do you want to clarify this issue, or who's going to draw the short straw on this one?
Yeah.
Three superintendents back, nobody reports.
I'm Mike Davitt, Superintendent of Needles Unified School District, and I'm going to be as responsive to your question as I can be, and it disappoints me to tell you that I simply don't have the technical knowledge to know exactly what we qualified under. This project's been going on, as you've heard, for over a decade. I've been superintendent of the district since July of 2009. My charge has been to try to bring this program to fruition. I don't understand its roots enough to be able to answer your questions effectively.
Okay, it looks like somebody may be,
Bring someone who has answers.
Louisa Park, Hancock, Onus and Park. And this particular project for this demolition, it's a 50-50. It is not a financial hardship.
all right, it's a 50-50. Okay. Okay.
Could I also add one other thing?
Yes.
When we were talking about leased land earlier, according to SFP regulation, a district can only lease from a governmental entity.
Right. So it will always be a government issue whenever a lease occurs, so our ability to lease is going to be subject to their...
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, the point is that we're saying that they had to move out because they were asked to move out. And so that will always be the case, because so the scenario that we have before us, or the issue is always what kind of precedent setting do you have? And is this where you want to go? And then Mr. Hagman points out, well, this is a very unique situation. And my point is that a lease will always be a unique situation because you're always, a lease
with the federal government.
will always be with government.
Right.
So they will always be at the mercy of that federal government. So there's no uniqueness to it. And when it comes to leases, all leases will be on the same footing. That's all.
Question?
Yes.
I'm just wondering, when you're looking at these sites, when you do your initial site verification, is there some kind of requirements? Do you look, I mean, I can't believe there's a lot of leased land schools out there, but if there is, do you look at the term of the lease? Do we get, how long, what's the minimum set for? I mean, this was built in 1953, so.
Regulation requires that it's a minimum of 30 years, or excuse me, a minimum of 25 years, 40 years, or 30 years, depending on the entity, governmental entity that they're leasing from.
Okay, I would hope at least 30 years.
If I may add, the new lease is after 5 years, the government gives it to them for $1 or something. So they will get, that was part of the deal when
The
they
end of the
moved.
lease is for them.
Yes.
Good.
does the new lease require demolition when it's abandoned, or is that a unique situation?
They will own it themselves after 5 years.
Great, thank you.
They're giving it to them, basically.
Okay.
Ms. Brownlee, you had a question.
Yeah, so just relative to the contract that was established many years ago with a lot of different leadership changes, et cetera, was any of this specified within the contract that in the event that the federal government wants to take back the land, they want to take it back as it was originally? In other words, did the schools, if the school district at that particular point in time knew that that was the requirement, but obviously through several generations of leadership and boards and so forth, they might not have known.
I'm not clear that if there's anybody left there that was there in the first place.
there a copy
So
of the original
records
contract?
that they have are what everybody went by. I think part of the issue was that they thought they were going to build, the first group thought they were going to build the school in 3 to 5 years, but they ended up not getting to finish it for 11, so the kids had to stay in the building they were being kicked out in, and the Bureau had to keep figuring out ways to let them stay one more year, one more year, one more year.
This is about the cost of the demolition, right?
This is half the cost of a demolition.
Right, so, I mean, one way or the other, you're going to get to that point of whether you had to demolish or not,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
I'd like to add that it was part of the original lease signed in 1981.
It was part, the demolition piece was part of the lease signed in 1981.
It was a requirement in the lease that the district entered into with the Bureau of Land Reclamation in 1981. And we have some specific language on stamp page 126 under district position, what was stated in the lease.
Senator?
But I don't understand what, and I tend to think of this as a unique situation to following along with my colleagues so far in the Assembly, that we have very specific regulations. We have regulations about demolition, paying for demolition costs when the site is going to be the same site. This, because of these unique circumstances, we don't have any regulations about this also when we're doing. So we don't have anything. We're saying that the eminent domain doesn't fit in this case, but that's assuming that eminent domain is the correct, what we should be applying to this, and which I don't think it should be. But I also think that we don't have regulations also about this, knowing that on federal lands these could happen. So I think it just confuses, for me, the issue and makes it such a unique situation that I'm willing to go along with the appeal.
It seems to me that when we've had other situations where a site's abandoned and the district owns it, the district is able to recoup its costs because it does whatever mitigation it has, and then it sells the land and it gets the net proceeds. But in this situation, that has no way of recouping its cost. It had the advantage of having the federal lease for all those years, but they can't have students there because they've got a wastewater problem, and they have to move, and they can't build on the site because of those issues. So it's just, like I said, there's a part of me that wants to be the stickler, but I don't think the district was in a position to do anything other than what it did. And if it had owned the land, it would be able to recover the cost. If it could build on the land in the same footprint, it would be able to recover the loss. It's just a very unique situation.
But there was a contract in 1981 that said that that's what they had to do when they left the property, is demolish the facilities.
So the question is, who bears the cost of it? And they're in a unique situation because they don't own it. They can't cover it through because they own the land. They can't cover the cost. They can't get a fair share or the other half out of it from us because they're not building on the same site. And I can't think of many schools in the state of California that are in that situation.
Except the request didn't come at the point in time, when they were asking for the money and so forth and so on. They didn't ask for the demolition money.
Okay, I think there's been a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote? Please call the roll.
Lowenthal?
And we're voting on the appeal now?
Yes, on the appeal.
I support the appeal. Aye.
Hancock? Okay, Brownlee?
Not voting.
Buchanan? Hagman? Almanza?
Aye.
Oropeza? Reyes?
Not voting.
Does not pass.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Mr. Chair, can I just raise an issue that's not really related to this item, but it's more of a procedural issue that I've had a couple of people point out to me that on these items that we're voting on in this one, what was it, item 8? It was item 10.
Sure. Sure.
The staff recommendation, the first one is to take no action. I've had some people raise the question whether that's an appropriate action relative to the Mason's legislative manual. Have you had anyone discuss this with you at all? And argues that the rules really don't allow staff to recommend to take no action, that we have to take a action.
Right.
And so I know we've been, for the last year or so, this has been a staff recommendation on various items, and we have followed it. But I guess I was just wondering whether this was something that the Rules Committee should really take up to make sure that we're acting appropriately.
Well, the way I look at it is they're basically laying out different options for us to take. So one, it was to accept the district's appeal. The other one was to not take action, therefore staff's recommendation stands. And the way I look at the process is that if the issue were clean cut, that the staff could take an action on it, then clearly the district's request comes through. It's when staff can't take an action because of the nuances, or it doesn't fit into the nice box where they're authorized, or is just inconsistent with something else that really has to come to the board. The action of the staff at that point is to deny the district's request, and then the action of the board is to essentially overrule the staff at that point.
Well, I know, just in this case, if we were, in terms of, rather than saying taking no action, that we would say we would move to deny the appeal, which ends up in the same place, right?
I think the move was to approve.
No, I'm not talking about the specific action we're taking. I'm just talking about in general.
Okay.
If in another item we would have agreed with the recommendation to take no action, or our agreement would have been to deny the appeal. Either way gets us to the same place. I'm just saying that whether we should be taking action specifically on denying the appeal, rather than saying we're not going to take any action, which isn't a vote, which means we haven't made a deliberative choice one way or the other. If that makes sense.
Yes, I get your point. Mr. Hagman and then Ms. Oropesa.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Ms. Burnley, but what I'm thinking is there's 99% of what happens on this is done by staff administratively. We have a consent agenda, they follow the rules. If someone doesn't like the rules, it's like back in city council days, they take it to the council, they overturn the planning commission, and the council had to take some affirmative action to change the status of what staff has done. Otherwise, no action means that what staff has done, following those rules and guidelines that they have, takes place. So in the absence that we don't have enough votes, then whatever staff does is there. I think we have to take affirmative action to change what has been done administratively, and that's how I see it. This keeps it kind of
I don't
straight.
want to make a big deal out of this. I'm just recommending that maybe the Rules Committee look at it, but I know in the Mason's legislative manual, it says in order for a deliberative body to make a decision or take an action, a vote must be taken. So if we're saying to take no action and we don't vote on it, whether that is a deliberative action on our part. And I have no motivation here other than to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Okay. Go ahead,
I'm not
Ms.
trying to
Oropesa.
overrule a decision or anything.
Yeah, I kind of view it as more semantics and maybe just giving direction to staff to make it clear that a denial will sustain the staff action, as Assemblymember Hagman says. But I don't view it, in all the years I've sat on this, view it as an intent to not have the board take an action ever, and I've seen hundreds of these. So I don't know that it has to go to rules as opposed to just suggest to staff that they write these differently to make it clear that they expect some action.
That would work, I think,
Okay.
as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go back to order. Thank you. And Assemblymember Fuller asked that we put the item on call, and so we'll do that. Ms. Jones, would you remind me of that? Thank you.
So tab 4 is consent.
Mr. Hagman, you had a comment on, I'm sorry, and we sort of jumped, but you had a comment before we did item 10. And I apologize for interrupting your train of thought. We can come back to it if you like, or the executive report. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
Consent?
Yes, please.
Get a motion to move?
I'll move the consent calendar.
And with that consent, is it okay if we approve some of the other items? There was the CENTINELA issue, or Senator Hancock, are you okay with that?
With the sort of compromise
Yeah.
that was worked out, yeah.
Okay. What was the other items that,
Tab 11, the regulations.
tab 11? Okay. And anything else that we can address?
The San Jose appeal, we are granting that if we pass the consent calendar.
The Horace, no, that's an action item. So it's not a
An action
consent.
item.
That's not a consent.
So I'll amend my motion to add the two
Those two
issues.
Okay, it's been moved. Second? Oh, you second, okay. Call the roll, please.
Hancock?
Aye. Aye.
Brownlee? I'm sorry. Buchanan? Hagman? Almanza?
Aye.
Oropeza?
Aye.
Reyes?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, but we'll leave it open to add the members who are absent.
Correct.
So when
Thank
they
you.
come back, remind me to go back to that issue?
Will do.
Mr. Hagman?
I was reminded what the question was, or the comment. It's just more of curiosity. When we set a funding round or a list asking for, because we never have enough money to fund them all, don't they just add the new ones onto the old list, and when has money come back to start peeling off, or do you throw out the old list and start over again?
Well, the regulation's very specific that the certification's good through a certain date. So with that in mind, post that December activity, we would have our opportunity to come back to the board, so those certifications were no longer valid during that tweener time.
So just so I understand it in my layman's terms. We had a list, all these people want money.
Right.
Under a certain bonding fee. We only get through half of it because that's all the money we have authority to bond out for.
That's correct.
The other half's still sitting there. As money comes in from that pile for people who don't take it, don't qualify, decide, I don't want to build, do they pick it off that list? Or do we throw it into the general fund pile, get some more bonds to start off of a new list? So it seems like those people have been waiting in line longer than maybe the new list people have. And how do you reconcile those two lists?
Well, for those time limit on fund releases that were actually expired in the end of October, obviously staff had to take consideration that those projects come in, give them an opportunity to submit the 5005, which is a fund release request. There has to be some kind of administrative line in the stand.
Sure.
But those projects actually have to come back for the board to approve the rescission of those projects. So that action has to take place before you assign the cash.
Correct. But I'm just wondering, last year's folks who didn't get their money, do they have some kind of point system, whatever, if they reapply to get some kind of credit from they were standing in line longer, or no? Just start all
No,
over
they
again?
just reestablish again with the priority system. And, I know Oceanside, there was a lot of, some concern about that, but where they're at they're pretty high on the list, and I imagine with the certification round again, you're actually competing with projects that are newer, much newer. So they obviously have much higher opportunity because of their date of approval to receive funding.
I'm just wondering, since this isn't on the agenda, if maybe we
Yeah,
could
that
add
was
it to
sort of
the
what we
agenda
were-
for
yeah.
the next meeting, where we can
We can then
maybe get a
dissect that, but
report
for now,
and
it's
have
sort of a
better
global
information.
statement.
Thank
So
you.
we'll take it as a global statement. Thank you. Okay.
So should you choose, I know we have the financials, but I'm not sure if you want to move to some other order of business.
Should we
You can-
go ahead financials are quick, so just give us Reader's Digest on
Okay,
that.
Reader's Digest.
We have read it.
Tab 5, page 72, just wanted to share with the board that during that small window of opportunity we had to report to you, we had a December meeting in the middle of the month. And for the 2-week period, we actually released $54 million, and $30 million came from the new apportionment round. So that's actually good for the limited role we had during the month. And tab 73, we actually show the chart of how much cash we have since the infusion of the new bonds. So we have over $1 billion. Something that the Assemblymember Hagman asked, as far as trying to reconcile those projects that came in for the time limit of fund release, what was that pot originally, and who made it through the line and who didn't? So on page 75, we created an illustration of trying to keep track of those projects. And so the illustration we have is in October, we actually did have a good portion of projects that were set to expire. And the red, obviously, were the projects that did expire, so that represents $62 million. The blue shaded area is $29 million, the projects that actually did come in. And again, the action had to go forward to the board in order to rescind those projects. But that's the universe, and they're in different pots. So it's not exclusively of new construction. It represents mod. It represents critically overcrowded schools. So we're trying to track the timeline. So it's more visual, more trackable, and more transparent about who came in, who perfected. So that was an added benefit we threw out there. And if we don't have any questions, I'll move on to tab 6.
Thank you.
Tab 6, it's our status of funds. Again, quickly, just want to highlight to the board that we did process $76 million this month in various categories. A good portion went out in, oh my God, I apologize, I need my glasses right now, but 17 projects for $27 million in modernization. We did approve 2 high-performance projects. A good portion of the activity related to new construction in Proposition 55. So we processed 6 applications for $48 million. And with that, I'll open up to any questions.
All right.
None?
Hearing none. Any public comment? Next item.
Tab 8.
Tab 8, please.
Tab 8 is beginning on page 106. This item deals with an appeal submitted by the San Jose Unified School District requesting approval for modernization application for the Horace Mann Elementary. The key issue in this appeal is the method by which modernization eligibility is determined under the Leroy Green Act. Through the passage of SB 50 in 1998, the law created a 2-step process to access modernization funds. The first step is to determine that a school district has eligibility, and the second step is to basically submit a funding application. School districts do have the option of submitting concurrent eligibility and funding applications at the same time, but they cannot access state funds for modernization unless the eligibility is established. Now, in order to determine the eligibility, the regulations require school districts to prepare a gross inventory of all the classrooms owned or leased at the school site. The law also sets the criteria to qualify, which is to have buildings that are at least 20 or 25 years or older, 20 if they're portables and 25 if they're permanent. The regulations also require districts to submit a form and a drawing on the site in order to establish eligibility. Staff reviews the forms, reviews the drawings submitted, and actually goes out to school districts to verify that the drawings reflect the current classroom inventory on the site as required by the regulations. Any discrepancies between the drawings and the actual buildings verified at the school site will be adjusted and updated in order to have the actual inventory of the school site before the eligibility is established. This has been the basic process that has been in place since 1998 in order to determine eligibility. Now, the San Jose Unified School District also followed this process, and by the year 2000, they established eligibility for about 45 out of the 57 of their school sites. Unfortunately, the Horace Mann Elementary School site, which is the site that is part of this appeal, was not one of those school sites. Instead, the district elected to move forward with local funds and demolish a total of 17 classrooms on the site and to build back 33. That project was completed in 2003. Now, in 2008, the district's consultant contacted OPSC to ask if they can establish eligibility for the site using older diagrams that reflected the ages of the buildings before the replacement project. At that time, staff did inform the district that they could move forward with this request. The district did submit the documentation, and they established eligibility at the December 2008 meeting. A year later, in April 2009, the district came in and submitted a funding application. At that point, staff reevaluated the determination of eligibility using the old diagrams in order to determine the inventory and concluded that it was in violation of the regulations. Upon hearing staff's position, the district withdrew the funding application, but they later resubmitted asking for reconsideration. Staff maintained the position, and subsequently the district filed the appeal. Now, it is staff's position that the advice that was given to the district back in 2008 was incorrect. That being said, we do not believe that we have the authority to honor that recommendation, as we believe that it goes against the requirements in the regulations and past practice. We do believe that the eligibility determination that the board approved in December 2008 was based on inaccurate information, and we would recommend that the eligibility be reduced to 0. Now, the district is claiming that the replacement area of like kind is an eligible use of modernization funds, and that school districts are eligible to receive reimbursement funding for modernization projects. We agree. We completely agree with the district. We don't have any concerns or disputes over those points. Our concern is specifically with the documentation that's required to establish eligibility. The district is also claiming that the regulations are not clear on this topic and at minimum should be amended. We do believe that one section of the forms, regardless of the outcome of this appeal, should be amended. This section doesn't support either the district's position or staff's position and should be amended. Aside from that section, we believe that the regulations are clear, and that's why we've been administering the program accordingly for over 12 years. Therefore, in order to keep consistency in the administration of the program, we recommend that the board take no action and allow staff's administration action to reject the funding application to stand.
Mr. Hackman, do you have a question? No, okay. Folks from the district, please, or anybody else who wants to make a comment on this? Yes, Mr. Hackman.
Before you make your presentation, I want you to be able to respond to this too. We talked in my office as well. I was going to get council's opinion on what's allowable, what's not, and kind of specifically what code, and that way you hear both sides of that.
I believe staff has correctly identified the code section and the regulations, and also this, even the 5003, which is the form required to establish eligibility for a modernization project, that their interpretation is correct, that it is, the term they've used is like a snapshot in time. So when you're coming in for that, for your application for funding, that at that time, the buildings on the site are of the appropriate age to establish eligibility for modernization. So in this case, staff's hands were tied when the application came in, and they have a site map that does not reflect what the site looks like when they're coming in for funding. Before they're looking at it, the eligibility was lost. There was no eligibility because the eligibility was established. There was eligibility on the site in 2000, and then in 2001, I believe 2002 might have been the date that the buildings were replaced, and at that, the application didn't come in until about 5 years later.
Okay. My name is Ann Jones, Chief Business Officer for San Jose Unified School District. Chairman Reyes, members of the board, I'm grateful for the opportunity to address you this afternoon regarding our appeal for modernization funds for Horace Mann. I believe the issue before you today is very straightforward, and it is nothing more than whether or not the district qualifies for modernization, eligibility, and funding at our school. I hope you will agree with me that the answer is yes. The project and application meet the requirements of the law. The buildings were eligible. Replacement in kind is permitted. Reimbursement is permitted and allowed. Regulations do not require eligibility to be established before work is started. In September of 2008, the district contacted OPSC, which was already shared, both verbally and in writing. We established eligibility for this site. After OPSC staff reviewed the case with management, their response to us was yes. Now, 4 years later, OPSC staff rationale for denying our funding application rests on the concept that the district was required to submit the eligibility application before beginning the project. However, that requirement does not exist in regulation or in law, nor to my knowledge has it ever been enforced in the entire 12-year history of the program. Why did the district not file for eligibility application before it began the project? I can only guess at the answer. I suspect that the district was unaware that completely replacing the school was a program that would qualify for modernization under the state program. San Jose Unified was sued in 1979 and in 85 found guilty of racial isolation in the Horace Mann neighborhood. San Jose signed a consent decree in '94 and, among other things, promised that community that they would replace the dilapidated portables with new permanent buildings. In '99, San Jose issued COPS and began planning the replacement. In '01, San Jose began construction, and in the fall of '02, the new buildings were occupied. Please keep in mind that if the district had spent money to modernize the 31-year-old portables that were at that site and done everything else exactly as we have done to date, we would have already received approval and funding for that project from OPSC and the board. Under that scenario, today Horace Mann would consist of 41-year-old portables with newish paint, air conditioning, and roofs. Instead, the district made a commitment to the Horace Mann community, built a $30 million award-winning permanent steel and block construction building that will last for decades. The district is requesting no more than the state's portion of modernization funds, $2.8 million. To deny funding for no legitimate legal or public policy reason based on an unprecedented reading of the words and the directions on a form is a disservice to the San Jose community and students. Thank you again for the opportunity to address you on this issue. Steve Adamo, our Director of Facilities, and Bruce Hancock from Hancock, Gonos and Park are here to answer any other questions that might come up from the board.
I do have a question. We met earlier today, and you gave me some historical on the lawsuit. And I think, that if I understand this correctly, it was in '79, then '85, and then the court decree came in '94.
Yes.
And my understanding, you started spending some money in '97, and then went in for the cops in '99.
Yes.
But the modernization program didn't kick in until '98.
Right.
So there was no program for you to qualify in '97 or '94.
No, it was when we began the project in '99. And in fact, when we look back at our records, we had actually worked with OPSC to get eligibility for new construction. So I believe that at the time, the staff didn't realize in '99 that they were eligible for modernization, and that's the only reason we wouldn't have filed at that time.
Ms. Buchanan.
Yeah, this is sort of a sticky wicket, so to speak. I think the first time districts were able to use modernization money for replacement was when, 98 or 99? So when they were originally doing the planning, I can see how they couldn't have contemplated it, because at that point in time, you couldn't use modernization.
It didn't exist.
It didn't exist, right. So you're sort of caught in that time period. And then the other issue is that because you applied retroactively, ordinarily if you were just modernizing, you would have been eligible because you could have gone and visited the site, correct? But because you decided to tear down portables or get rid of them, which I think was the right decision.
There was also a court decree to get rid of them.
Right, that's exactly right. But I think irrespective, was the right decision. Okay, all you had were blueprints, and so now the issue is, well, you couldn't visit, but you did visit the school to verify that that school existed when they originally thought they could were hoping to apply for new construction funding for the school. So it's not where the school wasn't visited at all.
That's correct. There was a site visit done for new construction purposes. So there was a site visit.
So, and did you verify the age of the buildings at the time of the site visit for new construction?
That is correct, some member. We did, for purposes, again, for new construction.
Because it seems to me that we shouldn't be wasting state's time or district's time with multiple visits. I mean, if you visit and you can verify that the buildings are a certain age. So, I'm inclined to support the appeal, but I have this that I'd like to bring up to board members. I am bothered that we have applications that come in 10 years or longer after a school is completed. And I would like to see us take a look at developing regulations that have a time limit, because how do you ever know what your what your liability is if, and I'm not saying you did this, but you get a consultant that comes in and says, geez, you should have done this and gotten this money 20 years ago. Well, that's not helping us today get money out to improve schools. So I'd be inclined to suggest that we approve the appeal, but also ask the implementation committee to come up with some guidelines that we limit the period, I don't know what it should be, that you can, in which you can file for retroactive funding, particularly with projects that were never submitted to begin with.
Is that a motion?
Sure, that's a motion.
Second it.
So can I bifurcate that, just so that we take the appropriate action? So the board is in agreement that we ask the implementation committee to look at the timelines? Okay, so that's not a vote, that's just direction, Bill, to go for it. Okay, thank you.
But the other part was to approve the...
That was, so I just want to make sure we're on record for the right.
Yeah, I just don't want to have this be a precedent that you can submit an application for the first time 10 years after a project's done. I just don't think that's a good practice.
Mr. Hagman, then Senator Lowenthal.
Thank you. It's an interesting story, and I understand that people up here are not the ones that are making decisions back in 1998, 99. So one thing I learned from being on this board for a year is if you want to get a quick turnover job, become a superintendent of schools. It's something people ever see. No one's been there more than 2 years, it seems like, anywhere. But in this particular case, okay, so we're in 98, 99, the new modernization program just came online. I can understand why no one understands it. But you applied for new construction at that time. OPSC came out at that time, and then denied new construction, or there wasn't new construction, or it was eligible?
The district did establish eligibility for new construction in 2000.
Okay.
They also established eligibility for modernization by 2000 for 45 of 57 school sites.
So they did know, obviously, because they applied for other sites for the modernization that same year, but they didn't put this in. So I'm trying to figure out what the logic here, why didn't it happen back then? What was the problem on either side of why wasn't this funded from one source to the other? If the school district's applying for multiple sites under both different bond funds and it was approved on multiple different bond funds, why wasn't this one brought in? What was this thought process back there? I guess I'm missing that part.
Go ahead.
Of course, I can only speculate, but all of the other sites, I do know that we did not do any modernization like this where we replaced in kind. So I would only speculate that we applied for all the other sites because we didn't do this type of project. We did actual modernization. We did paint, roofs, infrastructure, and we left this out thinking it didn't apply because it was a new construction.
Okay, and if I remember correctly, the court order was talking about something different. We use terminologies very generically, and courts see it differently than what we do. A new construction, we would think something building new. Modernization here means you could tear it down and rebuild new. It's still modernization.
Right.
Okay, so all these other schools got modernization. This school did qualify for new construction, but why wasn't it funded at some point?
The determination for new construction, we take a look at the district-wide inventory, all the school sites, all the classrooms, to determine if they have enough seats to house the projected enrollment. That's new construction. Modernization, it's a site-specific determination. So for purposes of new construction eligibility, we captured the inventory of all school sites within a high school attendance area, which is what the district used at the time, and they did establish the eligibility. But they didn't submit a separate application for modernization on this particular site.
But they did apply for new construction under that site, and they were eligible?
Yeah, again, it's used district-wide.
So it's not particular to this building project?
No.
It just says we're eligible because you need more rooms, this whole district?
Right.
See, when I get out of there 3 years from now, I actually understand this, but, okay, so you have the district who's eligible for new construction because they need classrooms. New construction says this particular school qualification needs to be torn down, refixed, rehabbed, whatever. So the district was that way. And then, okay, so now we got up to, you built it. You didn't think you're eligible to build these one funds. You built it on your own. You had to because you got the court putting the gun to your head. What happened those 5 years in between? At what point do you decide, hey, wait a minute, I go get some money from the state?
It was when we began to go through the SFP program again for other projects that we had done, and the consultant at the time said to us, oh, I see here that you didn't apply for modernization for this Horace Mann project, and it looks like it was something you could have applied for.
Okay. And then I guess the last question to our esteemed counsel here. I understand your interpretation says we don't have authority to do this. Is there an interpretation of the code that says we can't do this? I guess. You know, sometimes you have permission to do it, sometimes you have permission not to do it, so.
My review, as I look at it, is do I have authority to be able to give state bond money towards this project? And my concern here is that it is established by the buildings that are existing at the site, and the buildings weren't existing at the site at the time of application. And that's where I'm hesitant. I don't see that staff had authority to be able to provide the funds.
Ms. Brownlee.
Yes, I'm going to support the motion to support the district appeal. I think that the thing that bothers me the most was the district was told that they could do this at a time, and now they're saying that decision's been reversed, and I think that current practice today allows for reimbursement of these projects. So for me, I think that that's the most compelling piece, and I will be supporting the motion to support the district's appeal.
Okay. So,
Just to follow up on Assemblymember Hagman's questions, and I didn't hear why the district didn't apply for new construction for this site at the time that they generated their eligibility. Not for this site, apparently. So I just wanted to understand that piece.
I believe new construction is not site-specific, it's district-wide.
But you had the eligibility,
attendance
you
areas.
didn't use it for that, so I just wanted to know why.
It was used other places in the district.
I thought when you were in my office, I was told you had no eligibility for new construction.
I'm sorry, Ms. Buchanan. I think I was the one that told you that, and I apologize for confusing it. The point I was trying to make at the time, not about whether or not there was eligibility, but that there had been documentation and site visit at the site, because there was concern that there wasn't a way to record what was at the site after the fact. And I misspoke on the issue of not having the eligibility. I apologize for that.
So I just have a follow-up question. Why on earth, if you're under a court order, why on earth wouldn't you use your eligibility at that school?
I actually can't answer that, but I believe Ann is right that we probably use it at other areas, other schools in the same high school attendance area, because new construction is for growth and additional classrooms were needed, so I'm not sure.
But you were under a court order to replace this school.
Can I clarify on that court order? The consent decree or court order was really addressed the instructional program and changes that needed to be made available to eliminate the racial isolation. The conditions of the facility at Horace Mann and at several other schools were all a part of the discussion and part of the community meetings that led to the consent decree. The consent decree did not speak specifically to mandating any change in facilities simply because then the federal court would have been required. My understanding is the federal government would have been required to fund that. But it was in that process of coming to agreement that the district made a commitment to do whatever it could to replace with permanent buildings, not portables. And so that's why we did not consider trying to modernize any of the portables that were at the site. We went for the new construction, and I believe, based on looking at the documents, that the staff didn't know that new construction, that they could also file for modernization. And I suspect that because it was a new program, that OPSC staff may not have, maybe all of that hadn't all come. I'll let Bruce, he was around.
Mr. Almanza, you had a question?
Yes, that is my concern, is that there's a court order to remedy discrimination within the school district at this school.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't it have been the highest priority to find funding to fix this? At the time,
I think it was the highest priority. I mean, the fact that we went out and the district went out and issued $30 million in COPS was a huge risk And
Was there any fine or penalty from the court for the discrimination against this community?
I'm sorry, may I interrupt? I believe I have an answer. I'm sorry, I'm not thinking very clearly here. You cannot use new construction to replace existing classrooms. You must create new capacity.
That's right.
The new construction funds could not have been used on this school to replace these buildings. That would have been just replacing classrooms that already existed, and under the new construction rules, you would not have created capacity.
Senator Lowenthal.
I want to follow up on that. In my understanding, and I apologize for missing some part, and this gets very complicated, that you originally had requested or applied for, you had the eligibility for new construction, but then you were told, but it was just replacement of portables. Remember that you were told by OPSC at some point there, when you had applied for new construction for this, that this would not receive new construction, that replacement of portables do not receive new construction, and there'd be no state funding. Isn't that not true? And that no one told you at that time when there would not be no state funding and no new this is not eligible for new construction, that no one then said, but you are eligible for modernization. Is that not true? That never was written. There's no documentation of that.
No, Senator, and we don't have any record to state that the district was intending to use the new construction funding on this particular school site. Again, what they did...
You don't have any... I just thought he said that they originally had applied for new construction for this school site. They thought that that's the only thing that they had that they could do. They were told that they couldn't do it, new construction, but no one told them, but they could do modernization.
In 2000, the district established eligibility for new construction. Part of that determination requires us to look at all the classrooms in the school district. In this particular case, it was done on a high school attendance area basis. We looked at this school site as well as all the other school sites on that high school attendance area.
And did you tell them they're not eligible for new construction for this?
New construction, for this school, we didn't know. When district establishes eligibility, we're just looking at the inventory, looking at the projected enrollment. At that point, we typically don't know what they're planning to use with the eligibility. It's just a matter of determining whether they have it or not.
Did you ever communicate with them that this site was not eligible for new construction?
No, I don't know that question was posed to staff. I don't know that, Senator.
Can I ask the district, did you ever receive any notification from OPSC that new construction, you were not eligible for new construction for this site?
Not that I know of, and what I want to clarify is it's my understanding, and these guys are the experts, not me on this, that new construction funding cannot be used to replace classrooms.
Right. So we agree on that. But did you ever receive anything from them that this was not eligible for new construction?
I don't think they would have told us that because that was already a known fact that you can't use new construction money for replacement of classrooms. The point that we were hoping to make here today is that there was a concern that we weren't eligible because OPSC had not been able to physically inventory what was at the site. And what we wanted to say today is they physically inventoried what was at the site as a part of our application for new construction to cover growth that was happening in the attendance areas. So they did have the opportunity to inventory the site, and they did come out, and they've, so that was where this came.
Okay, I have Ms. Buchanan, then Mr. Hagman.
I was just going to clarify, the issue is if they had modernized existing buildings, they would get the money, because they could go visit the buildings and say, yes, they're there. Because it's a blueprint and they replaced them, they can't. But they did visit. We can verify that they were there in the age of them because they did visit during the new construction eligibility process. So it's another one of these that's, the problem for me is the retroactivity of the whole thing. So, I don't want to penalize the district per se, but I do want to make sure that going forward that we don't make this a practice where a consultant comes in and says, oh, you should have gotten money, and we're writing checks 10 years after the fact.
Mr. Hagan.
This has been kind of cool because I get to figure out how this stuff really works. My future job as superintendent lasts a year. Okay, so the OPSC established eligibility. So in the site visit, you basically visit all the schools within that area, not particularly for this particular qualification of this school site or new construction or old construction. It's just the district qualifies. So that part I got, new construction. But the thing that's a little bit of conflict is you're telling me that in the same time period the district received funds under modernization, multiple projects. So you have the same people who understand the rules enough to apply for modernization. Apparently, I understand they're repairing buildings versus building new buildings, who understand new construction. So it's not a small district. You have experts back at that time that understand the systems as they come online. So you have the new construction eligibility. You already got that established. They came out and did the site visit. So that you're qualified for. You decide to use that eligibility at different sites. Then you have the modernization, which I can understand they don't get it, but this time the actual district got multiple grants for multiple school sites to build modernization. So it kind of lost on me that they didn't understand it anymore. They actually probably got it, but they didn't apply for it until several years later because they actually utilized both programs in the same time period. Am I misstating that at all?
So my understanding is that they came in for modernization because a consultant told them you should have gotten modernization. The way I understand the timelines is when this project was coming through, modernization did not exist. And so I look at it akin to and I mentioned this, to the money for clunkers. If 2 years ago I submitted my SUV and the clunkers came after that, should I be able to go get my money for clunkers because I bought a Prius with that in replacement? And that's sort of the way I understand it.
Mr. Chair, if I could clarify that the modernization program did exist when the district replaced the school site. At that point, the program was established in 1998, and in 1999 the regulations were amended to include replacement area of like kind. So at that point, it was available when they demolished the school site.
But I thought they started spending money on this in '94. Oh no, that's the decree. '97 was the first money that was spent on this, and then the cops went in '99.
In '97, we spent $500,000 looking for a site acquisition and pre-planning. The site, we had hoped to actually find a larger footprint, but we were unable to do that, and in '99, the decision was made to stay in that same footprint and to demolish and replace.
Senator Lowenthal?
Yeah, I just want to explain my vote. I came prepared to support the appeal, but I met with the appellants in my office, and they told me at that time that they had received formal statement from, and they had in their records that this site was not eligible for new construction, that there'd be no funding, it said, for this site. It was not eligible. And that there was no record of OPSC then saying, but you are. They had denied this, and that there was a record of that. And now I heard just the opposite, that there is no record of that, that was not there. And so I'm just totally confused at this moment about what really transpired.
The record that I shared with you earlier today is in the district files that staff had documented new construction not eligible for modernization. So it was a belief. That's why we say here today we can only believe that the staff did not think that because they were replacing and not modernizing, that they didn't qualify for the modernization program, or they just said not eligible for state funding. And in fact, Horace Mann was not eligible for new construction because it wasn't adding growth.
I understand that.
So it was our records, not a record from OPSC.
If I could just complicate things a little bit further. No, Mr. Chair, the district had 17 existing classrooms. They built back 33. Now, the district qualified to replace the 17 under modernization. they could also request new construction funding for the additional 16. I just want to make that distinction. To replace existing buildings, modernization, new classrooms, it's new construction.
But they didn't do it.
But they didn't do it.
Right.
No.
Okay, so we have this appeal before us. Ms. Buchanan has moved. I believe Senator Hancock was second the item. Call the roll, please.
Lowenthal. Hancock.
Aye.
Brownlee. Buchanan. Hagman. Almanza.
No.
Oropeza. Okay. And Reyes.
No.
Motion does not carry.
Wait, I just wonder, how many votes does it have?
It has 4.
It needs how many?
6.
So my vote would not change the,
Do I?
but it wouldn't change the
That's
outcome. It
correct.
still would
It would
fail.
only be 5.
I'll stay off then.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tab 9. Withdrawn.
Can I clarify, but we still are directing staff to take a look at how we handle retroactive
Yes, that was sent to
applications.
the implementation committee and timelines and see what would work.
Thank you.
That was an excellent suggestion, I think, yeah. So, okay. And we did 10 and 11? 12. So we're on 12 now, thank you. 12, can we do 13 first? I think 13 frames the issue better, if it's okay with the board. Thank you.
Tab 13 is an item to adjust the per-pupil grant amounts for the school facility program. The statute requires that the board annually adjust the per-pupil grant amounts to reflect the construction costs for Class B construction on a statewide basis. We have presented to the board in the past Marshall and Swift, 8 California cities, 10 western states, and Lee Saylor. We are recommending that the board adopt Marshall and Swift, 8 California cities, because we believe that it most closely reflects the construction costs in California. Therefore, if the board adopts this recommendation, it would be a 3.76% increase to the per-pupil grant amounts for 2012. With that, we're requesting that the board adopt the Marshall and Swift 8 California cities.
Any questions?
I move to support the staff recommendation.
Ms. Buchanan?
I second, and I also would like to, when I read what the ed code sections that we're quoting, it's clear to me that whatever adjustments we make now or in the future need to be based on construction costs in California. So I would also like to recommend that we make as our standard the 8
permanent,
California
right.
cities. I do not think we should even be considering the western states.
So at this point, we have the policy of doing this annually, and so the staff action is for it to be occurred for the next 12 months. Council, can we adjust that decision even, well, is there any comments from the public on this? Okay, Ms. Oropesa?
So historically, at some point in time, there was a single standard, and I don't recall at the time which one it was, but we had it placed in statute, and subsequently that was removed to do this annual adjustment. But I think it's easier, as you point out, just to have that
I think it should
single.
be annual
Was it the
adjustment.
western states that was the single one?
You know, I can't recall at the time which one it was, but I just think it's easier just to know what it's going to be.
And it should
yeah.
reflect the cost of construction in
California.
California.
Yeah, I guess I want to do it in my...
I'm not making it part of the motion, I just
No, but
suggested
I
that.
think you, and I want to discuss this a little, because I'd rather go, if we can frame this so we can do it on a permanent basis, and we can always come back and adjust. So rather than taking this up every year, everybody knows what we're doing in the future, and send a clear signal that, it is what it is, and then if somebody has better information and can make a case that we ought to change it, we can change it. But I think at this time, are we precluded from doing it permanently, Council, or do we need to just do it, or we need to...
Well, what I'm looking at from the Ed Code, it does 17074.10 B does say the board shall annually make the adjustment.
All right.
However, as a suggestion, this could be an item that, unless otherwise, could be put in the consent for January of
Okay.
2013, the consent for January of
And
14.
my suggestion is not that we don't vote on it, because I think it's important that we vote on it.
Yeah.
My suggestion is that we not compare the western states, that it be based on what the cost of construction is in California.
Okay. Mr. Hagman?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with everything Ms. Buchanan said, but I would like, as a member of the board, to be able to see it, compare, to really kind of pick out, for me, my family's in the construction business, all our costs is going down. I can't believe we're going up when the labor's going up. So all the bids and stuff. So, I'd like to actually get the report and figure out why we're wrong. But it can be just a kind of like automatic, just a for information only type of thing, but also just the fact that we just overlook it, and then all of a sudden we lose that authority and some survey out there.
Fair enough, fair enough. So it's been moved, and I believe I heard a second. Was there a
second, yeah.
Okay, it's been moved second. A public comment? No additional questions? Call the roll.
Lowenthal? Hancock? Brownlee? Buchanan?
Aye.
Hagman?
Aye.
Almanza?
Aye.
Oropesa?
Aye.
Reyes?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, and then if we can go back to item 12.
Michael Watanabe, OPSC. We're on tab 12, stamp page 139. This item is, the law requires the maximum assessment for development to be adjusted every 2 years. This item is to request the board make that adjustment that it appears appropriate. There are 3 levels that may be leveled for developer fees. The fees are levied on a per square foot basis. The lowest level, which we're requesting the board set tonight, is a level 1 fee. Is assessed if the district conducts a justification study that establishes the connection between development coming into the district and the assessment of fees to pay the cost of the facilities needed to house the future students. On page 140, you'll see the various indices that we've used, consistent with board action in the past and the previous item. Recommending the board adopt the 8 California Cities Index, which would raise the 2012 level to $3.20 for residential and 51 cents for commercial industrial. This is 8.21% over the 2010 level. I just want to point out that in 2010, the staff presented 2 rates, one with an increase and one with a decrease. There was a motion to approve to be consistent with 8 California cities, the decrease of 1 cent down to $2.96, but that was not approved. A substitute motion was made to keep the rate at the 2008 level. So with that, again, staff's recommendation is to accept the Marshall and Swift 8 California cities, effective immediately.
I move the recommendation.
Moved in second.
Lowenthal? Hancock? Brownlee? Buchanan? Hagman? Almanza?
Aye.
Oropesa? Reyes?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to item 14.
We're on tab 14, page 146. Now that the board has adopted the per pupil grants for 2012, this item is to present options for the execution of those grant adjustments. This item is requesting the board take no action and provide no adjustments to the SAP grants for any project on the unfunded list prior to 2012. At the January 2000 meeting, the board adopted the 8 California Cities Index, which resulted in a decrease to the per unhoused pupil grant of 6.74%. The board elected at that time to only apply the adjusted grant amounts to projects awarded and unfunded approval on or after March 2010. The 2010 decrease in the CCI was the first decrease in the history of the SFP. Because of this, the board expressed a desire to maintain flexibility to specifically adjust those projects should the grant amounts increase once again in 2011. At the January 2011 board meeting, the board adopted again the 8 California Cities Index, which resulted in an increase to the per unhoused pupil grant of 4.28%, with corresponding increases to the 2011 project allocations. The board also elected to apply the 2011 CCI adjustment to projects on the unfunded list beginning March 2010, and in order to include all projects that are awarded using 2010 grant amounts. This action did not include an increase for underfunded approvals prior to March 2010. The board approval dates for the projects on the unfunded list range from 2009 through December 2011, and will also include today's new unfunded approvals as well. Until 2010, the current year CCI was always applied to projects approved or apportioned in that calendar year. Since unfunded approvals are not yet apportionments, they are not subject to the statutory full and final provisions and can be adjusted for the CCI at the discretion of the board. On page 148, we have a table that kind of summarizes the projects on the unfunded approvals list. For projects that were approved prior to February 2010, there are 13 projects on the unfunded list with the current value of $33.5 million. If the board were to apply the 2012 increase of 3.76%, these projects need $300,000 additional bond authority. For projects approved in 2010 that are currently using the 2011 grant amounts, there's 114 projects at a value of $211 million. If the board were to provide an increase to those projects, we need an additional $8 million in bond authority. For projects residing on the unfunded list with approvals in 2011, there are 323 projects currently on the list at a value of $953 million that would need $35.8 million in bond authority. There are additional considerations for the board when deciding how to apply the current CCI adjustment, including the remaining bond authority. Any augmentation of the existing unfunded approvals will reduce the remaining bonding authority the board has available to provide future awards. After the December 2011 board meeting, there's approximately $197.1 million in new construction bond authority and $362.3 million in modernization bond authority. Providing increases to all projects on the unfunded list would reduce the remaining new construction and modernization authority by $11.2 million and $20.1 million respectively. On the top of page 149, we've kind of illustrated how new construction bond authority may be affected should the index be applied to all the projects on the unfunded list. Another consideration for the board is the bond sale proceeds have not been sufficient to cover all projects on the unfunded list. Because of this, districts may wait for an apportionment for an extended period of time. Districts with sufficient local funds may proceed with the project and receive a reimbursement when an apportionment is granted. Other districts are unable to proceed until an actual apportionment is received, especially financial hardship districts. In either case, the grant amounts awarded for projects approved in previous years may not align with construction costs at the time the contract is awarded. Finally, unfunded approvals list includes projects for charter school facilities program and critically overcrowded school program projects, such as advanced fund releases for design, site, and environmental hardship. These items are not truly unfunded approvals, and they will receive the current year CCI when they are converted. Staff has presented 4 options for the board. Option 1 would be to take no action and provide no adjustments to the SAP grants for any project added to the unfunded list prior to January 2012. Option 2 would be to provide increases for all projects that received an unfunded approval in 2011. That would require the use of $35 million in bond authority, though. Option 3 would provide an increase for all projects with 2010 and 2011 unfunded approvals. That would require additional use of authority of up to $43.8 million. And the last option is to provide increases for all projects on the unfunded list, which would require up to $44 million in remaining bond authority. One last thing I'd like to point out is that for those projects, the 13 in 2009 and the 114 in 2010, none of those projects have participated in any of the 3 priority funding rounds we've had to date. So with that, again, staff's recommendation is to approve option 1.
Mr. Hagman? Generally speaking, you know, when the school goes out and, I guess, bids for their contracts and stuff, and then we have the money to give to them, that's a pretty fluid process. When we put them on a list, and they're having to bond and bring school, you know, matching funds and stuff in some cases, they're going off what the initial costs were at that time. When we put them off for a couple of years, then obviously so those costs may go up or may go down. But to make this adjustment each time we have a CCI, it's kind of cumbersome. So I was thinking, is there a way to go, like, you know, what's the standard? If I go out and bid for a job, what's about the most normal time? Is it 3 months, 6 months, 9 months that bid's generally good for? Of course, the cost of materials go up and down by the time you put the shovels on the ground. But I'm thinking that it should be, you know, from when you applied, or at least within 180 days when you apply, what that current rate is, just so it's administratively, and we have to adjust up or down based on the index, because we're not given the money immediately. You know, that's my initial thoughts on it. So there's a way to do this more smoothly versus, you know, each time we do this to change it back. Well, not the 209s, but the 210s are okay, but the 211s you're out of luck. No, it should be like, what is the current rate within 180 days when you applied for it or something like that.
Ms. Buchanan?
Yeah, I support option one, and I just want to speak briefly as to why I do. My understanding is option one has been historically the past practice of the board. And when I substituted at my very first meeting, we had, the question of what was going to happen with the, after it was 2010, early in 2010, what was going to happen, how should we be adjusting that? And we made an exception then and did it retroactively, but only because we hadn't had a December meeting. And we felt at the time that if we had had a December meeting and would have approved those projects, they would have been funded at the higher rate because we were dealing with the rate dropping. But now we're dealing with a situation where the grants are going up, the economy is flattened out a little bit, and we had our November and December, we went through our normal funding cycles, and while we are increasing the grant amounts, if you talk to anyone out there in schools or construction, they probably would support what Senator Hagman was saying, and that the construction, the raw materials may be going up, but the bids are still down. So I don't think we should complicate the practice. I think we should go back to past practice. If we want to change it in a future bond, fine. But so I'd like to move that we approve option one.
Second.
Senator Heck, thank you. Any comments? Senator Lowenthal.
I want to follow up on what the Assembly Member Buchanan talked about, whereas the costs of certain materials may be going up, but the actual bids are coming in lower. Do we have some data on that? I know in transportation projects, that's exactly what is happening, that cost of steel has gone up, but our bids are still coming in lower. I just wondered if do we have any data to support?
And I only know that anecdotally.
I know, that's why I'm asking.
Classroom cabinet.
And you make a strong argument based upon that. I just want to know from OPSC, what are those bids coming? Are they coming in with significant savings, or any savings, or are they going up? Are there competition and bids are coming in? Is it still a market that you can shop around and get a real good bid at this moment?
I assume Mr. Merel is trying to get my attention. Was that for a prior comment, or is?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, good. Please.
Thank you, Chairman Reyes, board members. I'm Joe Dixon, Assistant Superintendent of Facilities with Santa Ana Unified. And bid prices have been coming up. We were quite surprised a couple of years ago how contractors could actually stay in business because they were quite low. So bids have come up, prices are coming up, and we would like to see the unfunded list going forward get this increase, because if we have a $15 million project and we have some more on the unfunded list, and the cost, the data is correct, what do we pull out? What do we pull out of that $15 million project out of our DSA approved plans? So we would like to see unfunded projects get that increase going forward. Thank you.
I mean, where are your bids now compared to where they were 3 years ago or 4 years ago? My understanding with districts, even if they are coming, I mean, we were getting bids that were down as much as 30% or so. So are you saying that, and we certainly haven't lowered the grant amount, so are you saying they're still that far down, or how far down, how far are they in terms of being competitive right now?
They're coming back up. We actually
coming meaning what?
The costs are coming back up, the prices are coming back up, and we've had many similar projects. And let me give you an example. In January 2010, for an ORG project, a 16 classroom project, it came in at 50% of the architect's estimate.
Right.
The following year, it started creeping up then. And all I can say, and materials haven't been rising, and prevailing wage hasn't gone up that much, but I really believe the contractors were just keeping their A-teams busy. I think now they're making money again.
50% before, are you over now, or are you maybe 80% or 75%?
We're coming pretty close to the estimate now. That was unusual, 50% below the architect's estimate, but it has come up. And we have, and thank you to the board, we had 24 projects apportioned in December, and we're out to bid on all of them right now. And we're seeing that again. So we're doing our value engineering, we're doing those kind of things, but the price has gone up, and we have a $15 million ORG project, which would be about $750,000 if the data is correct, and I believe it might be low. But what do we do? What do we pull out of our DSA approved plans at that value? That's kind of the dilemma.
Senator Lowenthal and then Mr. Almanza.
No, I've asked my question. It's still not clear. I've heard this. The price is going up, but I think Assemblymember Buchanan asked a very clear question. If a year or 2 years ago you had bids that were coming in at 50% of the architect's estimated cost of the overall project, and now they're coming up, does that mean that now they're at 75%, 60%?
Or is
You're saying that the numbers are now such, or as the architect, have they come down in their estimates? I understand we're moving in that direction, just as unemployment is moving in the right direction, but the reduction, but at a very slow rate. I just need to understand just the scope of the issue of the problem itself. And I hear that we need to change because the estimates and the bids are coming up, but I don't have a feel yet what that really means.
Mr. Chairman, if I could try to maybe answer to a degree the Senator's question and comments. One of the things, Senator, that we've watched over the last 2 or 3 years is the cost of labor and the cost of materials.
Okay.
And we have seen, and this is under prevailing wage, we have seen slight increases with the cost of labor and continued increases with the cost of materials. That delta, the differential in the bids that Mr. Dixon is talking about has to do with the markup that contractors are applying when they bid projects.
Right.
And so what has happened in this market is that the markups have not been applied. So that standard 15% markup that was when I was building schools about 12 years ago and before was being applied, that hasn't happened. During the last decade, when we had that huge acceleration after 2004, markups were way beyond that. So what we see is the practice of contractors, in order to keep the doors open, not taking a markup, but basically saying, we'll even sometimes take losses, and we've had contractors tell us that. So it's deceptive. What's happening in the market is deceptive when it comes to comparing it to the CCI.
Okay, I have Mr. Almanza and then Mr. Hagman.
Well, that was basically my question, is that a year ago's bids were coming in at 50% of architects' estimates, and today they're coming in at about 100% of the estimates, but I would expect the architects' estimates are 50% lower.
They have adjusted, certainly. That was an unusual case, and that was one case out of 37 projects, but it was just an indicator of what was happening. And when they came in lower, and I believe we lowered the CCI amount, we also returned money to the state, to the state program, so we shared in that savings.
Mr. Hagman.
And I think that's good to hear, because a lot of times we hear when the school districts come in under bid is either they basically keep their part of the money and use the state portion, or they'll come back to us and say, well, I'd like to apply it for a solar site now, or now I want to put a pool in or something like that. So we don't see the benefits when the prices are down. But at the,
give us money back from new construction.
yeah. But at the same time, I think there is a procedure, and correct me if I'm wrong, if they go out and they get a set of approved plans, OPSC, this is it, they go out and bid it, and for some reason the price comes a little bit higher, I thought we were mentioning there's some other way to close that out as well, if they prove that came in. Wasn't there some part of that?
No, there's
Maybe that goes into new system planning sometime in the future, yeah.
There's a few exceptions to the full and final to adjust upward. One is for site cost, cleanup cost, the other is for relocation cost. But those are the only two exceptions.
We're limited. Okay, we have more coming
Okay.
from the public.
And Mr. Chairman and members, I didn't introduce myself before. Tom Duffy for Cash. And just a couple of points that I think were important. And what we'd, with all due respect, Mr. Buchanan, what we would ask for is option 4. What hasn't been discussed today is that in AB 127, the bond bill of 2006, there was a provision to allow for a review of construction costs and to have the board make an adjustment on beginning in 2008. And not to belabor the full history, one adjustment was made in 2008. No adjustment has been made since that time. When you made the reduction, as Mr. Watanabe mentioned, that first time ever, that 6.74 reduction, you had before you, at the very same meeting, a study that was done by OPSC staff. There was an error in that. We suggested a correction. If that error were done and you looked at the data, you would have seen about a 12% increase over the period of looking backwards, which was what that study was to do. What we suggested at the time was, since you could, by under the law, make an increase of 6%, since the CCI went down by 6.7%, we said take the 6% away and just make an adjustment downward of 0.74 at that time, so that we can stay as constant as we can with what we believe was really happening in the marketplace, based upon the data that was collected by OPSC. That wasn't done. We have continued to fall behind, and I think that the reality of what's going on in the marketplace, as in Senator Lowenthal's question and my response to it, is not fully grasped by the data that's here. And so I realize that the intent of the recommendation from OPSC is to preserve capital because we're running out of capital. What we'd ask for is to maintain the integrity of the program, which really has been lost, I think, since that freeze of 2008.
If I could briefly respond.
Yes.
My understanding is the program has never made retroactive increases except when we made the exception for going back to 2010 because we hadn't had a meeting. So this recommendation is consistent with how the grant amounts have been handled from year to year. If I were representing Cash, I would be arguing the same way you're arguing. But I have a hard time diverting from past history when this is how, these have been the rules ongoing. The only reason we made an exception was that 1 year is because we didn't have a meeting and we didn't want to penalize those districts. Further, it would be more compelling to me if estimates you made a couple years ago initially doing this were, you know, that we had skyrocketing inflation. And by the way, we didn't do that evidently when we had inflation skyrocketing. We didn't go back and make the retroactive increases. And now when we have a period where bids are still competitive, you know, everybody I talk to, whether they're in, you know, the commercial, the schools, or just, you know, they're adding on to their house, are getting very competitive, good bids. So I don't see a compelling reason to go back and deviate from past practice when, well, like I said, underlying costs, some of them, if you're buying wood or cement or whatever, are starting to go up. When it comes to the bid environment and the actual costs the districts have to pay, they are still getting very competitive rates that were better than they were getting before the recession began. So that's, you know, you and I just have a fundamental disagreement there, but I think we ought to stick with the past practice, the rules that have been in place that we've all been playing by for some time. Now, you and I have had talks. There's some point in time maybe we should look at the grant amounts in more depth, but in terms of the adjustment, I think it makes sense to be consistent.
Okay, Mr. Lopez and then Lyle.
Also wanted to point out that the adjustment that was just pointed out, there was a difference in interpretation in the bond, whether really it was supposed to be beyond the 2 years. And if I was sitting in his chair, I'd say the agreement was for just 2006 and 2008 and was not contemplated to be every 2 years.
Lyle.
Good afternoon, Lyle Smoot, Los Angeles Unified School District, and Assemblymember Buchanan. I'm not sure that's an accurate reflection of the board's prior actions, and I'll admit I don't know for sure that, but I don't think that this board has historically denied the adjustment to projects that were sitting on an unfunded list, except for 1 year when, in '09 or 10, whatever it was, that there was some other reasons for not applying them to. But I'd like to just point out that, what you're talking about here is really, you're going to deny this money to districts and cause the district to have to pay it, or cut projects, like Joe Dixon said, because the cost doesn't go away because you do or don't apply the adjustment to projects that are sitting in line. And the argument that, there are projects that are already bid and already constructed, and those projects don't need the money, the increase, I don't know there's no data that supports that I know of, that says, because you bid it last year, you would save money equal to this year. For LA, at the height of the problem, I'll call that the inflationary years, we were getting a 70-30 program. We were getting 30% of the money from the state. Now it's much better. We're still not experiencing 50-50, and so what you're talking about is to continue to deny the district like LA and others a real shot at a 50-50 match. The concept that you're going to say that a project that was filed 6 months ago versus a project that is filed today, even though they're both going to bid at exactly the same time, the one that filed later gets more money than the one that filed earlier. That doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to me. Districts are still experiencing less than a 50-50 match in many, many, many cases. And to deny those districts simply because they're on a list, even a year ago, there's no factual basis for making that kind of a decision that says that the cost isn't going to be there. I think the cost is there. The fact that the CCI is going up is indicative that projects that are going to be bid after today or after January 1st, whatever, are going to have cost increases. And that's going to be reflected, and somebody's going to have to pay it, or else the project's going to have to be, made lesser. And I really think I'd like to see you make a decision to apply that to all projects, because like I said, it doesn't make sense that you filed tomorrow, you get it, and you filed yesterday, you don't get it, even though you're going to both bid the same project, same period of time. And I really would like the staff to respond to.
Well, no, this is a public comment, not a dialogue time. So this is a public comment. This is your ability, your time to present your issue, and not we're not going to go dialogue back and forth.
I'm just asking the question, do the statistics back up that the board has not provided this CCI in the past?
Oh, okay.
That's all. I wasn't asking them to respond to any of my statements other than that one, and that was not my statement.
A question I would like to answer.
Yeah, that's definitely good. I mean, that's a valid question. That's a valid question. Do we have anything on that to staff? Probably not right now?
Probably not right now.
Okay. Richard.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members. Richard Lyon, California Building Industry Association. We would recommend the board adopt option 1 and apply the increased block grant amount on a going forward basis to projects that come in as of January of this year and are put on the unfunded list. If you apply backwards, you're going to have to do it across the board, not just to 11, but to 10 and to 9. And as the staff has indicated, that is going to reduce overall bonding capacity, and more specifically, it's going to reduce new construction authority that is at a precipitously low level today. So we recommend the board be consistent with its past practice and apply this on a going forward basis. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. There was a motion and a second. Is there additional comments from folks on this? But Ms. Brownlee, and I think it's accurate in requesting that we have this information, so we should have this available to us when we have this. So if you could get that to us before the next hearing so we have a sense. Appreciate that. No, it's been moved and second at this point, and then it's up to the board. Yeah. So any additional comments or questions? Call the roll.
Lowenthal. Hancock.
Aye.
Brownlee. Buchanan. Hagman. Almanza.
Aye.
Oropesa. Reyes.
Aye.
It does not pass.
So is there a substitute motion? Can we not take action on this pending the answer to Ms. Brownlee's question?
We can hold it over.
Would that be acceptable? Okay.
Like some data.
Yeah, so we'd like some data on that. Okay. So there's no action on this item.
Tab 15?
Okay, before we go to the reports, are there items that are still open, Ms. Jones? Please?
Yes. Senator Lowenthal, you wanted to have your vote counted for consent agenda, Centinela Valley Union High, which is tab number 7, and 11, which is the SFP regulatory amendments.
Senator Lowenthal, this is you.
Yes.
And I would like to add
And
on.
I'm sorry, and you too, Assemblymember Brownlee? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we also had Needles still open. You want to call finish the roll again, please?
Needles.
It was, we requested that it kept open.
Okay. Well, I show everybody having a vote, because it did not pass.
But Ms. Fuller asked that we do reconsideration, so I said we'll keep
Okay,
it open.
very good. Senator Lowenthal. Needles.
How about Needles? I voted aye before on Needles, I believe. I'm going to continue to vote aye
Okay.
on Needles.
Hancock. Brownlee.
Not voting.
Buchanan. Hagman. Almanza.
Aye.
Moore. I'm sorry, Oropesa. Reyes.
No.
And it still does not pass.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, now the informational items.
15, tab 15.
Thank you.
Assemblymember Buchanan on new construction.
We've met twice in between our first meeting and taken a look at considerable information in terms of where we are with respect to funding, what our burn rate is, when we expect to run out of money, what potentially will happen if we if the COS money converts. Her testimony in terms of where we are in construction industry, new housing starts and all of that. In between our first meeting and our second meeting, we received the governor's budget, which actually I think shows his clear intent to find a way to hopefully extend the new construction program and avoid level 3 developer fees. But we're still in discussion phases trying to find consensus among all four of us. I think we all are in agreement that we want to avoid the level 3 fees. Where we're trying to find consensus is what we believe is the best way to do that. That'll both provide the best program we can and put us in the best position possible to pass the bond at the time we are able to put it on the ballot. So we had another meeting scheduled for on February 6th, but we're going to now reschedule that, but hopefully be able to have something to bring back to you, because I think it would be, obviously, the governor will provide trailer bill language, but I think it'd be nice to have this committee in our capacity be able to have some kind of consensus on the direction we go.
Thank you for the update. Ms. Brownlee?
Yeah, well, thank you for your comments and the work on the subcommittee. I think I'm not sure exactly, what the goal of the subcommittee is. Is what you're going to be making a recommendation of some sort, or and a recommendation to the legislature, or
to this body, to the state allocation board?
Because I think that this is obviously, the governor's budget proposal is a starting point, and these issues are going to be discussed in budget subcommittees as well as, I understand, policy committees as well. So I'm not sure if it's this venue where I mean, obviously, we don't get to decide, but I presume if there's a recommendation, it's a recommendation to the legislature.
That's exactly what it would be, and
It would require legislation.
it would. I mean, there are some actions we can take, I think, administratively. There are other actions that would require legislative action, but my own feeling is this board should be, it has most of the knowledge in terms of the program and where we are, and we listen to constituents, and I think it would be, if we could come up with a consensus bipartisan recommendation, I think that would be healthy. And
Well, it would be a recommendation from the subcommittee to come to this board for further discussion.
And the board would then take full action and see where we go.
Okay. Well, I just want to make, I think, one comment here, and that is that I think we can find a win-win solution in here, and I think, in terms of the developers, I mean, there are other avenues other than what the governor is suggesting, or, trying to stretch this out for as long as we possibly can, and it's a concern for me to, and I'm not saying that I don't want to look after the developers, but to look after the developers and to hurt schools. And that doesn't seem like it's a win-win to me. And so I guess, I want to still, with the assumption that the governor's budget proposal is a starting point. It's clear that there were two bills moving through the legislature relative to bonds that aren't vehicles anymore. But I think it's really important to continue to advocate for more bond funding in this state. And I don't want to take what the governor's initial suggestions are and sort of let that go, because I think at the end of the day, that's a win-win solution. And we can look at bond funding relative to bridge funding, a commitment in some sense for maybe not 2012, but for 2014. I don't know, but I just think that there's a lot more that, I want to continue to try to kind of keep our eyes on the larger picture here, and try to do the right thing. So I'm not part of the committee, but I just hope that the committee will kind of keep their options open, and not just sort of assume that it's over relative to the possibility of a bond. I think that, everybody hasn't weighed in yet on that.
I would just comment that, just kind of putting the cart before the horse here, that is a subcommittee process, taking public input. If we come up with consensus, they'll be brought back to this board where each and every one of us can comment at that time on that recommendation, decide whether or not we recommend anything to the legislature or not, which the legislature can ignore that and accept it as well in this public hearing. So I think we have one more meeting, and hopefully by the next board meeting, we will have some kind of conclusions out of that. After the several hours we sat in that thing so far, we'll come up with some kind of consensus.
And I would just add, Senator Brownlee, I voted for your bond. And if you recall, spoke in favor of it, because I do think it's critically important that we keep it in front of the people and they understand the need. And so I think, I'm looking forward to the continued discussions in the subcommittee, and I'm looking forward to the full discussion we're going to have here as a board, because my long-term goal is that we keep this program going. I think it's the best program we've had for school construction, and it's allowed us to build many new classrooms, rehabilitate many old schools, and it would be great if we could have a bond this year. If we can't, though, I think we have to be prepared to put ourselves in the best position we can to make sure that we're in the best position to pass a bond at the time we are able to put it on the ballot.
Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Not to prolong the meeting, but just wanted to comment. I appreciate the opportunity to have this subcommittee so we can have the discussions, but I very much appreciated your comments, Ms. Brownlee. We had a cash membership meeting today, and there is a very strong feeling that we need to continue to press forward for a bond, and that a bond for schools creates jobs, which is an engine for this economy, and that schools, as we've said over and over again in written form and verbal form, that school construction projects, as all of you know, give the opportunity for jobs now, not something future such as high-speed rail or something else. And so I appreciate your leadership, and we appreciate your leadership, Ms. Brownlee, on this. And I don't know what that vehicle will be, but our intent is to continue to press forward for this and to make sure that the governor and others in this building know of our intent and our need. And so we'll look forward to further discussions with the subcommittee whenever that occurs. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. This may be an appropriate place to do it. I believe this is the last item we actually have to do anything with on the agenda, the rest of information, but it is connected with spending money on schools. I'm wondering if we could have an agenda item at our next meeting regarding something I brought up a number of months ago, which is moving funds from the lease purchase program, which has about $12 million in it, to the joint use account. The lease purchase program no longer exists. We have a number of ready-to-go projects in joint use, and we might be able to put people to work, do good things for schools and communities. We have asked for a ledge council opinion, which should be available, soon, and we'd share it with staff.
Staff was currently working on something in that area and is pursuing legal clarification on whether or not we have the parameters to access the funds. So it's an Attorney General office issue. So hopefully we should have that rectified within the end of the week. Next week, I apologize.
And I think in the past, that money has been swept into the general fund.
It's been swept into joint use for joint use purposes. So it would be up to the board for full dialogue when that money becomes available, where they want to allocate what programs.
Okay. So, yeah, we can, if we can get the legal opinion, so as soon as we have a legal opinion, if we can put it as an agenda item.
At index.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Tab 16?
Yes,
In the interest of time, just want to share with the board the highlights of the accomplishments that we've embarked on this year in 2011. For the most part, there is a diagram on page 153. Most of our accomplishments, as you can see, relates to providing the consent agenda and action for providing apportionments. So conclusively, we do provide over 932 projects this year, or last year in 2011, with cash and or unfunded approvals. And put that into retrospect about some of the appeals that we handle, it's less than 5%, 99.95% of the items that we handle, this board handle, is via consent. And so a very small fraction, 0.05%, is handled in the manner of appeals. So we wanted to highlight that. And then in general, there are 26 appeals that did come forward in this board, and 13 of those appeals did get resolved administratively. So those are the things that, behind the scenes, the board doesn't have that knowledge, but we wanted to highlight that for you. Charts A, B, and C, for future purposes, gives you the drawdowns of unfunded approval via the state, and cash has been awarded for 2011. And we have a breakdown of that, and I think we've also gave the courtesy of the breakdown for your legislative districts as well. Tab 17, if we're moving on, is the 90-day workload. And so if there's any questions related to the workload and what's on the appeals docket, we'd be more than happy to answer those questions.
Okay.
Seeing none, 18 is our meeting, next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment on any of the items that folks did not get a chance to speak up? With that, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.